Hello, class. Before I start our new chapter on advertising, I wanted to review your broadcasting assignment one more time. Now, for this assignment, you aren't doing any new research. You're just taking your reporting writing project, the traditional news writing project from chapter 9, and you are rewriting it as a broadcasting script. Now, each script should be about 2 to 4 sentences, and then you'll have a SOT afterward. The SOTs are the direct quotes that you used. Now, if you can, you want to use a different one than what you picked out for your traditional news writing project. However, you can use the same ones if you feel like those are especially compelling or you don't really have any other ones that would work well for this story. And of course, remember, whenever you're adapting your scripts, your story into a script, you need to write in the present tense. That means focusing a little more on whatever the most recent development is at the beginning of your story. So when you introduce it, you're having a little more of that right now or what's happening next angle to your script. Now, whenever you write a broadcasting script, you do need to include some directions for the graphics and for the news director and all of the other people involved whenever this goes on air. What you do whenever you write the beginning is you'll either start out on camera or you'll start out with the VO up full on the screen. Now, if you start out on camera, you can start out with either just an anchor read with them by themselves, or you can have that over the shoulder shot. That could mean having so either a small graphic, or if you want to have a VO OTS, that's usually when you start with playing the video, but it's going to be in the little box next to the anchor instead of it being on screen. Same thing with a monitor. You can use a monitor shot as well. Actually, let me go ahead and add that in here. And you may also notice all of the command information is in all caps. Your script for the anchor read should also be in all caps. It makes it easier to read in a teleprompter whenever everything is capitalized, a little less confusing as well. And you also want to include, are you going to use a graphic for most of the read, or are you going to use a video? If you do decide to use a video, explain what kind of video. If you're using a graphic, include information about what's in your heading, your subheading, and your bullet points. Usually, if you're using a graphic, it'll be a 3-point list. If you don't use a 3-point and you say that you would prefer to use a picture to go along with it, you may do so as well. Now, of course, I don't expect any of you to have any of these physical materials available. We aren't going to put this on camera. This is just practice writing the script and understanding what goes into it whenever you develop a story for TV broadcasting. Now, another thing you may want to use is a stinger or a wipe. Now, whenever you use a stinger is usually to indicate that there's something special about the story, like if it's breaking news or happening today or tonight or what have you. A wipe is generally a transition if you're going straight from one graphic or video to another graphic or video without coming on camera first. You might want to use that as well. Just think of different ways to develop your story and what would make it more entertaining for you if you were watching this on YouTube or on TV or something. And of course, if you do decide to use a stinger, make sure that you explain what it is in your script. So, for example, if this were a breaking news story, then we would have for this part, we would include the stinger and then have that in our script as well. So not only did we include the information breaking news stinger here to indicate to the production staff what stinger we need and that we need one, we also have it in the script where it says breaking news, and then we introduce the information. Now, again, we're following the traditional format for this class. You're going to have your name, the class and your period, and which project it is. In this case, it's Chapter 11 Broadcasting Writing Project, and the date that you're turning it in. Then you'll have a title for your project, and you'll introduce it. It doesn't have to have a stinger, but if you include one, this is how you would do it. And then in this case, I'm saying I want to start with a VO monitor. So that means it would be the anchor with a monitor next to them that playing video of Purdue Pharma, Bankruptcy, Sackler family. So when you're writing your VO descriptions, think about what video you've seen related to your project. Most likely, some or all of you have seen a version of this on the news before, or of something similar to what you're discussing. So very, very short description, but still descriptive enough so I understand you know what kind of video to request if you were the scriptwriter requesting video. And then, of course, I lead with breaking news, and then 24 attorneys general are rejecting. And whenever you write any names that seem like they might be confusing, in this case, Purdue Pharma, you write the word first, and then you write the pronouncer after it. This may vary if you do go into broadcasting. Some places or readers have different suggestions about how to line it up. To me, it makes the most sense to introduce the word and then the pronouncer after. Now, we started out with the video, so I already had my video description up here. We go to VO full, and I describe the super here. So I want the super attorneys general reject Purdue Pharma bankruptcy plan. And then I included a semicolon to indicate what's supposed to go on the bottom. So this is a separation of the two ideas. And then OxyContin lawsuits. And you can see they're also in parentheses here. And each line of my script is indented. And once you give a pronouncer, you probably don't need to include it in the rest of your script. I usually do it the first time and then don't do it later. And if the anchor or the other person wants to change it, they can. Now, if you look at the script, I have Purdue Pharma's owners, the Sackler family, would pay about $4 billion over 10 years. Those payments, however, do not have a fixed timeline, and then take SOT. The SOT, of course, is the sound on tape, the direct quote. And I include the super information here. It's Maura Healey, Massachusetts Attorney General. And she said what the Sacklers are offering is a way for the payments to be structured that makes it convenient for them. And you can see the SOT is written with regular sentence punctuation and capitalization. The difference is I include quotes around it as well to distinguish this information from the mention of the super and any other info in the script. Okay, now the second example, I had a wipe here and then take VO command and I explain what's in the video again. And then I have my super as well. And it's more or less the same information. So I kept mine the same. If your script varies a little more, you may want to rewrite the super you have. Now it starts out the same, discussing the rejection of the bankruptcy plan. But then I rewrote this part to help it transition into the direct quote a little better. So the proposed plan outlines additional settlements from both the pharmaceutical company and its owners, the Sackler family. Critics argue even after $4 billion in payments, the Sacklers would still be one of the richest families in the US. And then take SOT. And this one is by Nan Goldlin, an activist who is a critic of the Sackler family. And then her direct quote says that's the most disturbing, the idea that they'll walk away with impunity. So in this case, her quote focuses a little more on the Sacklers. So my lead-in focuses a little more on the Sacklers as well. And then I included my references. This will be the same as the references you used for your traditional news writing project. Again, double check, make sure you're calling it references, that you're following the correct punctuation, formatting for everything. Not all of them will be exactly the same, but if you go on the APA website, so again, that's the American Psychological Association website, not the Associated Press one, check the formatting, check the example of the type of reference you're creating compared to the reference example, and you should be okay. And one more time, your broadcasting writing project is here in section 13. And you can see it says, rewrite your traditional news story as 2 VOSOTs, include 1 quote from each source, and then follow the directions given in my example. Okay, now on to chapter 13, advertising part 1. If you've ever watched the show Mad Men, you know it's about a man, Don Draper, who works in an advertising agency. He's part of the creative team who comes up with the catchy slogans, figures out ways to market to an audience. The show itself isn't exactly 100% accurate, as most shows are not, but it does give you a very entertaining view of the advertising industry and what happens behind the scenes before ads get to the audience. Now, first, I want you to think about an ad you remember seeing recently. When did you see it? Was it online when you were scrolling through recommendations by Google, or was it on Instagram? Maybe you saw an ad play before you watched a YouTube video, or if it was a banner ad, maybe there could have even been a billboard you passed while you were driving to school, or, there are so many different places where we see ads every day. Now, if you look at different ads, you'll notice that some places will have several different kinds of ads. And, Usually, if they're using a different format, like if they're using a billboard instead of a newspaper ad, a company will use a slightly different approach, but they'll still have an overall theme behind it, no matter what type of target audience they have in mind. Now, what is advertising? Advertising is a paid communication between a known sponsor and an audience. So, someone is paying for this communication to happen. They want an audience to act upon this information. Normally, it's informative and persuasive if it's a good ad, and it will promote a product, service, or idea. And the biggest part about key to advertising is you want to promote brand awareness in your target audience. So you're working on building awareness with your consumer group. And of course, that can happen in a lot of different types of campaigns. As I mentioned, advertising is everywhere. A few of those places are social media, print ads like magazines or newspapers. It could be a radio ad. Sometimes you'll hear product placements in songs or see them in movies or TV. And you can even find them in video games. People or companies often pay to have their products included in something if they think it's going to be really popular with their particular demographic. This happens a lot with alcohol, or sometimes with songs. Even they'll request, or someone will promote a particular song by including it in a TV show or in a video game. Now, of course, that gets into more of a creative level, suggesting and back and forth between the people producing the TV show or the video games and the people who want to have their materials included. But it does happen sometimes. And even the mention of a product, like if Coke allows its brand to be included in something, then they're probably receiving some kind of compensation from that particular group. Now, advertising campaigns will vary based on the target audience. That means there may be several different types of campaigns happening at once in order to target multiple groups. But all of them will start with a creative brief. A creative brief is a pitch either to the company who owns the product or is trying to promote a service, and where you explain to them why your approach is going to work the best. Or it might be, if it's an internal advertising group, you pitching to colleagues to explain why your approach is going to work best to get this target audience to act on the information you're giving them. Now, a three-part creative brief starts with an objective statement. You can find it on page 227 in your book. It outlines what you're trying to accomplish, and you're explaining that X is happening right now, and we want Y to happen. And then you continue to explain how you're going to get there through the rest of the brief. Now, when I say that X is happening, that would be if there's, let's say there's a drop in McDonald's sales because they're trying to figure out why. Well, the first step, of course, is to research why this is happening. That would have happened before you started writing the brief. And you would say, oh yeah, we noticed that after we got rid of chicken nuggets, people stopped showing up at this particular location. So we want to promote our better chicken nuggets that are coming out, and we should be able to get even more people than we had before. And you want to include a supporting statement after you explain your objective. So, why would your approach make sense? Well, if we advertise our new chicken nuggets and how they're made from whole pieces of chicken, then people are more likely to buy them, because even though people are coming here for fast food, they want to feel like they're getting something a little healthier that isn't quite at what someone would consider maybe like a dog food level or something. So then you would if you said something like that, you would need to back it up with evidence of examples where that worked before. And you would maybe talk about another place that started serving better chicken and was able to improve sales. And after they advertised it on TV and had like Instagram ads about it. And of course, the third part is discussing the tone or brand that you want to use whenever you are developing these promotions. So, how will you carry out your plan? Well, you want to make it sound, maybe you want those chicken nuggets to sound like they're more health conscious, but not necessarily more expensive, because your target demographic is going to be a group where they don't necessarily want to spend a ton of money on fast food, but they are definitely going to buy it if you make it sound like it's a good deal. So that's in the tone of you're making sure that your message is going to be acceptable to those people. So not too highbrow, but not so lowbrow that they feel like they're going to get gypped if they buy these chicken nuggets. Now, another approach to writing a creative brief is focusing more on your 5 W's and your 1 H. Now, that's, of course, our who, what, when, where, why, and how. Whenever we're discussing the 5 W's and H in a creative brief, we're normally referring to identifying the target audience and the proposed interactions with said audience. Now, who, of course, is when we develop information related to our target market and our target audience. So, what is the target audience's preferred delivery method? What has proven to work well with them in the past? That's part of your research phase of developing the brief. Now, for the what, you're explaining how you're going to offer this message to your target audience, what is going to be an effective method, and what do you want to show? So, what is going to appear in this physical thing? Are we doing billboards? Is it going to be maybe a flashing ad on a page, banner ad showing there's a flash sale with a bunch of pictures of products that are available and we know people think are really cool? Are you going to use maybe something to develop a PSA? Are you talking about car seat safety and you're showing a dozen eggs inside a car seat in a crash and how they're safely cradled inside of it? And because you're using a slightly different item in there instead of actually having a person, it might make more of an impact than if you just show people getting in a wreck or coming out of something safely. And of course, part of it is going to relate to what type of delivery you want to include. Now, you keep your preferred delivery method of like, is it going to be supposed to be funny? Is it supposed to be kind of serious? Do we want it to be really artsy, or do we want it to be a little a little more average Joe level. Those are all things you want to keep in mind whenever you're developing the what part of your message as well. Now, when this will often refer to when you're like what time of year or time of day you're going to run your ads, or how long of a period will you have it. It could also mean how long will the spot be? Are you going to make a TV ad that's 10 seconds, or maybe a 5-second YouTube video ad? Are you going to include some interactive elements with it, or are you going to leave it as kind of a standard video ad? Do you plan to maybe progress the ad campaign by starting with a 10-second, like if you're doing something for a movie, if you want to do a 10-second trailer in January, but then by August, you're going to have maybe a new 15-second trailer and push that along with banner ads until the release at Christmas. So it's a time frame for the campaign. And of course, along with time, we also have to think about place. This will include not only targeting areas of a country, it would also be using different platforms. Are you going to just use platforms related to your area? So if you have a fundraiser for a nonprofit organization that just works in Acadiana, you don't want to send anything to New Orleans or to Texas because that geographic area isn't relevant to the to your campaign and your target audience. Or you might also say the target audience you're looking at just goes on Instagram and on YouTube, so you want to just focus on developing ads for those two platforms instead of having them on like in a print newspaper, for example. Now, we also want to talk about the why. So, why is this product valuable to your audience? You want to keep that in mind when you're developing your message, because you have to appeal to your audience on an emotional level and also a rational level. And you want to make sure when you're developing those appeals that you aren't overreaching and kind of pushing information at someone. You want to make it, what you're doing is you're offering this information and trying to make it as acceptable as possible to your audience. And that also brings us into our how, where we're talking about the tone of your advertisement. So if you have a skating rink ad, it's going to have a different tone than if you have a funeral home ad. You want to keep your audience's state of mind in mind whenever you're discussing how to appeal to them. Now, when you're developing your message, of course, the first thing you do is the same as any other kind of media writing. You want to do your research. You need to ask, what is the purpose of this ad? What are we trying to accomplish? And once you figure out what it is you're trying to accomplish, like, am I trying to sell X amount of this particular item, or do I want to just drive traffic to the website first and then it will promote more sales in general? Or maybe I want people to vote for someone in my party in the upcoming election. That would be another kind of ad. You go in and you research how other people have done it before, and then you identify your particular audience and its values, and you figure out how to adjust your your tactics based on your research and on your target market and your target audience. Now, a difference between the target audience and an actual audience. A target audience is who you want to sell your product or service to. The actual audience is who actually shows up whenever they see your ads. So maybe your target audience is in a different city or has different demographics, and then the people who actually show up to buy your product. Well, they can either try to adjust your message to get your target audience more into the area where you want to expand, or perhaps you'll recommend your client consider focusing more on the actual audience and adjusting the ad campaign based on who actually shows up. Now, when you're writing messages, of course, you do have the idea that if you're doing a larger level campaign, you want to have some kind of overarching idea or brand concept for everything, but a each creative brief is going to focus on one ad idea. So you're going to use a different approach if your target audience is younger people going to McDonald's versus older people going to McDonald's, or people with children versus people coming back from a night out, maybe. So keep that in mind. You're just focusing on one part of your target. So it's one target audience, not the whole market. You just take it piece by piece. Whenever you're writing your message, you want to present action options for your audience. So this might either be an immediate action or it could be a delayed action. If it's an immediate action, it's something where they need to act right now. That's where time is running out and I'm your only option kind of sales tactic, where usually you'll include a phone number, email, or event information. You also may want to include some other information, like if you have a flash sale, then you'll tell them, maybe you'll have a like today through Saturday, or for the next 2 days you get to take 30% off of the potatoes we're selling in the store or something. So those are more immediate action items. Delayed action is going to be a broader level campaign. So maybe you're shopping for a new car, but you aren't ready to buy just yet. Well, a delayed action campaign helps to build a rapport between the audience and this car dealership. And then even if the person isn't ready to buy one right now, they will probably buy one later because they heard about this place already. And this can also be if you're trying to maybe change someone's regular habits, like if they usually go to Albertsons, but you want them to go to Rouse's more. Well, that's a more of a delayed or continuing change you're trying to develop in your target audience. And of course, whenever you create your message and you're developing your creative brief, one of the ideas you want to focus on is explaining what happens if the ad works. So, what do we consider a successful ad campaign? Is it increasing foot traffic 30%? Is it increasing sales 20%? Is it maybe selling more of a particular product from a store? Or, they have a lot of different approaches, and you base those numbers and desired outcomes on the research that you did at the beginning. So if you saw that a similar grocery store was able to improve sales 30% by doing whatever type of campaign, like a banner ad campaign, maybe, or changing their sale papers to come out on a Thursday instead of a Tuesday, you would say, we anticipate this level of growth or change based on the evidence from our research. And of course, whenever you do that, you do need to make sure you're looking in the same market, that you aren't like overreaching and looking at one that's either a lot smaller or a lot bigger than the one you're working in. But in general, you're usually able to get a basic round figure you can offer to a client, and hopefully your campaign is able to improve that much. If it isn't, that's when you go back. Let's say you were expecting 30% change and you got 10%. Well, let's reevaluate the campaign and see what didn't happen. Where were the problems? Or if you have something that works really well, then you might go back and see what happened to make it work so much more this time than last time, and see if you can replicate that success with other clients who have a similar problem. And a reminder, your homework this week, your broadcasting writing project is due on Sunday, and you also have an advertising quiz on chapter 13. And that's it for today. I will see you guys in class.